and speak to their experience since they graduated Open Door. Part of the reason in doing that is because we want you guys to see here is where you could land. Here are some of the things that you could be doing after high school. Some of you may be looking at, hey, high school it's okay here at Open Door, but we want you to see how your experience here can prepare you for whatever your next may be. And so I've got a special alumni that I want to invite to the stage. Let's see if I can get his name up here. Can we I'm not an alumni. Can we give a huge Open Door welcome to one of our own, Mr. Zach Overs? Mr. Overs, welcome to the stage.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Can everyone hear me? Thank you.
All right. So I've got to share with you all, the idea of Pat Chats actually originated with this guy, all right? And his idea was, how do we bring in alumni to have them come back and speak to our current students, all right? And so that is the purpose in what we're doing here today. And so for now, it's going to be more of like an interview style situation where, I'll be able to ask Mr. Overs some questions. We have some other alumni. I'll just share some different titles of who may be coming. So we've got some project managers of some different manufacturing companies. We have an operating room nurse who's already scheduled, all right? And so I know she is very excited to come back to speak. And she is, let's just put it this way, she's younger than this guy, right? So she can speak to just, not that you're old, all right? But anyway, she can speak to a little bit more of her recent experiences because she is currently working on her BSN, right? That's Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. And so as we continue to bring in some other guest speakers, we want to be able to provide this opportunity for you all. So, Mr. Overs, let's get started.
All right, sounds good.
All right, so Mr. Overs, can you share with everybody, how did you decide on your career path?
Yeah, well, it hasn't just been one simple thing. I go back all the way to the beginning to my life, and even before that, just my story, as I tell my students, is very much an Open Door story. My parents met at church in the Open Door. They got married in this very room, so right here. And I went to preschool at Open Door, graduated from Open Door, so Open Door has been a huge part of my life. And as far as career path, I went on a lot of different adventures through college and after college, and had a lot of just different trials and failures and some successes along the way. But afterwards, I had the opportunity to come back home and to find an opportunity here. And so really, it was just a God thing of being able to find where I could fit and where the opportunity was at that moment to come back here. And I'm really excited about it.
Sure. So, Mr. Overs, can you share some of the other different, occupations that you've been in prior to being a teacher here?
Yeah, for sure. So in college, I started as a business major, but I found that I didn't want to go down that path, so I switched into political science, so I majored in that. And so I got into statistics and polling and data and worked on some presidential campaigns out of college, and so I worked on that. Once those were done, then I moved into statistics with basketball, and so I started my own company with basketball analytics for a while, and so I did that. And then I found that I liked speaking and writing, and so I moved to Chicago for a time, and I was a comedy writer and actor for a small bit while I was still coaching basketball. So just a bunch of different adventures throughout the way. And yeah, then I ran out of money and came back to Ohio, became a real estate agent for a time, and started to get burned out from there. And then God opened up a path here. So I've really just been on a bunch of different adventures, and I'm happy to be here.
Sure. So you've had several different occupations you've been a part of. And I think that's important because I look at my own father he's worked for the same company for the last 40 years, all right? And so that style of working is not necessarily the same anymore, where somebody works for a company for that length of time. And so not only have you worked for different people, you've started your own company. What was that like?
It's just very lonely. You have to put in a lot of hours to be able to come up with a plan for how you're going to raise money, who the market's going to be, and you meet with different coaches, and you find out they have 95% of the stuff done right, but the other things that other companies can provide, they might like a little bit more. And so sometimes you get funding from them, sometimes you don't. And so it's just about getting used to failure and having a lot of different failures and trying again and just being willing to try over and over again, because you're not going to get everything right the first time.
Sure. And so knowing that you've gone through those different failures, like, talk to me about how your faith has helped you through that process, because oftentimes when you fail, you fall down, and that's when you feel like you're in your lowest. And so I'm sure that those were times where you sought the Lord out. So talk to me about how your faith has helped you through that journey.
Yes, my faith has helped me keep my eyes in the right place, because sometimes when you get knocked to the floor, you're just staring up at the sky, and that's the best time to acknowledge God, because you've been so humbled and you're in a place where you had these big dreams to do different things, to go to different places, to live in different cities, and then all of a sudden you run out of money and you're back living with your parents in your late 20s, and you're embarrassed about that. And so you have to just take the fact that you got knocked out by life, and that it might be God showing you something, that, hey, your attention shouldn't be on yourself, and it shouldn't be on the things you could do or the money you're making, but it should be on me. It should be on God. And that's something I've had to learn time and time again, because there's just so many different places that you can fail in life, and just to remind ourselves that God is always there and he can never fail, and that's the cool thing about it.
For sure. And so speak to me a little bit about, through that process, how have you built resilience, or, another word, grit, as you are, as you were going through all those different times of failing?
I think that as you go through failing, you just become less and less affected by it. You become almost numb to the pain of it. You become almost, untouchable at a certain point, because if you say, I'm not worried about failing, then the mindset almost shifts into, then I can't really fail. If I don't fear it anymore, then you become almost invincible, because if I fail, so what? That's just how you learn. That's what you do. And so when I'm teaching and when I'm coaching, I always try to have a lot of failures, but to make them as small and quick as possible so that you can learn from them and help other people build up that immunity to failure.
For sure. And so I didn't ask you this question ahead of time, so this one is a bit off the cuff. All right, so talk to me about failing and writing comedy and as a comedian.
Yeah, so comedy is the hardest thing in the world, I think, because when you tell a joke and no one laughs, it's just the emptiness of your soul. And when no one laughs, and it hurts more than anything that I've experienced in my life. But thankfully, it's taken me a decade to even get the confidence to even write any more jokes, but I've been able to trickle out a few different things to different audiences here. I have a little newsletter with some goofy things that we've been getting going. But yeah, when people don't laugh at you and you're trying to be funny, that's the most humbling thing in the world, and you have to just completely kill your ego and start back at zero. But thankfully, God has given us friends and encouragers to start at zero with and to move forward with. And it's cool to have people here who love me and care for me, and I love them back, and that's definitely mutual. So
for sure. So I want to take it back to the beginning after the end of high school. So share with everybody just where you went to college and just a little bit about that experience, because I think, especially after talking with the seniors, I know that's one question they have is when looking at the college experience, like how do I make friends? How do I do X, Y, and Z? So talk to me a little bit about your college experience, where you went to, and what that was like.
Sure. So I'll even go back a little further. So in high school, when I was here, I did about everything that you could possibly do. I was the class president, and I got good grades and everything. It was just going really well, and I was really happy with how I was, and I was an ambitious guy, and so I went into college, and I really charged myself to make friends and to do well in my studies. But even as smart as I was, I thought I was pretty smart, there were so many people so much smarter in college, and that humbled me. And there were people who got placed at jobs and internships above me, and that humbled me. And so I went to Indiana University, which is a beautiful campus, one of the most beautiful in the country. I think it's just an awesome place to be, great environment, great students, and a lot of cool sports. And so it's just an opportunity, because the thing I like about a big school is you can try out different things. There are so many different opportunities. If you want to be a chef, you can try that. And if you want to be someone who drives monster trucks the next week, you can do that too. There's just all kinds of different career paths that you can make, and you can really let God direct you where he wants you to go. So I really enjoyed my time at college.
For sure. And so when you were at college, because this question came from a particular senior, when I shared a little bit about what this whole Pat Chat was about. They said, hey, is there any way you can ask the question, how do you make friends when you move away to another school? So being you're here in Elyria at Open Door Christian Schools, you're moving to Indiana, right? What was that like? Did you know anybody there already? What were the kind of relationships
No,
you
I didn't
built?
know anybody there, and that's what made it more exciting because I just wanted to start a new chapter. And I think that's one of the important things about life is just to embrace the chapter ones that you have in life. So if you're going to college for the first time, embrace that chapter one. If you're changing your major, don't get down on yourself. Embrace that next chapter one. If you are having a new job, embrace that chapter one. So my chapter one there was to go out and just to meet people. And all I did really at the beginning was just have my door open in my dorm room and just have conversations as people talked by. I didn't do anything crazy. And then all of a sudden, you're going to football games with 5 or 6 guys, and you have friends. And there's a Christian student fellowship house there, which is basically just like a Christian frat. There were guys were on one floor and girls were on another floor. And I had a lot of good Christian relationships from the beginning through that. And so I would just say, just keep yourself open and build relationships one at a time. You don't have to force anything.
Sure. I know as we talk about relationships matter, like for everybody, that's one of the things that it's just being open. Much to your point, Mr. Overs, when I was in school, that was the best way is you just had your door open. And so, for me, I made all kinds of friends on my floor. 15 out of the 20 rooms were all jumping on Halo 2 on a LAN party, which most of you probably don't even know what that is, right? You guys know what a LAN party is? No? Okay. A couple of you do. But anyway, that's, as we talk about relationships matter, so for the high schoolers, just always remember that the experiences and the friendships and relationships you guys build here, this is just a starting point. Mr. Overs, I'm curious, how many of your high school friends from your class are you still connected with?
Probably only 4 or 5, I think, just throughout the year, because we only had 32 in my graduating class, and we were kind of a splintered class. We didn't get along as well as some of the classes I see here. Just kind of, people had their own little pockets and little cliques, and that's just how it was. But I still have some good friends that
Sure.
I talk. But most people move away and have their own lives, and that's just how it goes.
For sure. Yeah, and so as we move into, really looking at all of these kids right here, what advice would you give to all of our students here who are they're trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to do is just to take different actions that you're interested in, because a lot of times we think that clarity comes from thought, but it really comes from action, because I'm someone who's more of a thinker than a doer, but it turns out that I don't really gain clarity on what I like and what I don't like until I actually do the activity. So if you want to write something, then write something. If you want to get into some profession, shadow somebody doing that. Do the action and don't just think the thought, because actions are going to bring you more clarity as far as what's truly in your heart and what God has for you.
For sure. Yeah, because I hear students often share, hey, Mr. Grove, I want to be a nurse when I get older. And that's great until you start asking more questions. Have you been in an operating room, or not an operating, like an emergency room where there's blood, where there's I can't handle that stuff, so I don't even want to talk about it. But ultimately, have you been in that space to where you've actually seen what that looks like day in, day out? For those that want to be veterinarians, contrary to popular belief, it's actually kind of a miserable job, because 80 to 90% of what you're doing is putting people's pets down. And that's kind of sad. And so without actually shadowing and experiencing it, you may spend 2 or 3 years pursuing a career in that area, going through college, taking those different classes, and then you get into it and realize, oh, this is not for me. Likewise, for those that, want to become teachers, they get to the very end, they do their student teaching, and they hated it. And so now they've just invested 3 or 4 years of their education and of their expenses, and it's now been a waste. And so to Mr. Over's point, it's important for you guys to really start experiencing, different occupations where you can shadow, where you can interview people. And so we'll share more information later on of just some things that we would love for you guys to do so that you can begin getting to that point to where, you know what, I want to make sure that I don't get sick when I'm at a doctor's office and, they're drawing blood, all right? Because the moment you pass out, that's not for you, right? So Mr. Overs, if you could, though, I would love to know, like, were there any kind of mistakes that you wished you could have avoided throughout that process of getting to where you are now?
I think for me, it's more of the things that I didn't do. I was always someone who more kept to himself. A lot of times, like on a Friday night, I didn't go out and do any crazy parties or anything like that. And I'm not saying I wish I did. I'm saying that I wish I would have just tried even more things. I wish I would have tried more clubs and organizations within the school and just kind of gotten out there and tried to figure out who I was more so early on rather than not doing so. So I think you have to kind of have a balance between doing things but not doing too many of the things. So.
For sure. Yeah, and so as we talk about relationships matter, we talk about friendships, kind of peer to peer. But one of the things that we often talk about here at Open Door is, some of the purpose in having a with group is having a small group of people you can connect with, but also to be able to have kind of that mentor where, you've got somebody who can pour into you, right? It's nice when we've got Dr. Daniel up here, and we've got Mr. Zaleski, Mr. Ribeiro, others who may preach God's word, but to be able to step aside and have a conversation, like with Mr. Mayo during with group or with Mrs. Stoniker during with group, that's a great time to be able to connect with somebody. And so they become almost like mentors at times. And so, Mr. Overs, can you share, like, was there a mentor that, just provide a lot of guidance to you as you were going through, especially during that season of entrepreneurship and starting your company?
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely had several mentors throughout my life. My parents were the first ones. They just taught me the importance of faith and believing in Christ and salvation, and not just having it, but like living in that way. And then when I went to college, I was desperate to find kind of a family because I didn't have anyone out there I knew. But there's a guy at the church named Stu, and Stu was this old wise man who had gray hair and a mustache and glasses, and he was very positive, always smiling. And one phrase that stuck with me was that God doesn't have any grandchildren, just children, just meaning that just because your parents are saved doesn't mean that you're saved. It has to be your own relationship that you are tending to and that you are working on and growing with Christ. And so that's something that's stuck with me throughout the years.
Yeah, that's great. And so that would be something I would like to share with everybody is, especially as you guys begin to, after you guys graduate from high school and you begin getting into college, finding those mentors, especially whatever school you may attend. If you decide to join the military, finding that that sergeant or whoever that can, really just kind of pour into you, just because, we're not meant to do it alone. And so in those moments where, there's that failure, especially if you're away from family, having somebody you can turn to is really, really good. And so ultimately, Mr. Overs, as you think about just what's next, right? You're here at Open Door. And I'm going to put you on the spot here, all right? So what's next? Do you see yourself being here till you retire? Are there other pursuits that you want to go after?
No, I'm very happy here. I don't see myself anywhere else right now. And one thing I've learned is that the further in the future that I plan, the less accurate those plans become when real life happens. And so it's almost meaningless to have any thought down the road because God has his own plans, and that's what's going to matter. All I know is I'm very happy right now. I love the classes that I have. I love the students that I have, and I really enjoy the coaching as well. And so I like all the aspects of it. I'm just trying to find more places where I can fit in and help people and still be myself the most. So that's what I'm trying to do.
No, that's great. And so did you ever, when you were a freshman in high school, sitting in here for chapel, did you ever envision yourself becoming a teacher?
No, I didn't, because my mom was a teacher. She still is a tutor, and I just wanted to get away from that. I wanted to explore, and I did have the chance to try different things, but you don't really know something until you take action on that, and sometimes God is the one who leads us to those actions, and it has fit very well so far, and I'm really liking it.
For sure. And so if you could tell all the students here today one thing, what would you tell them about as they are pursuing whatever career path the Lord may have for them?
Yeah, I would just say don't be afraid of failing, because failing is how you learn. And if you just do something that you succeed at all the time, then you're not doing something that's challenging you. You're not going in any direction. So make sure that you try different things and you fail. And I think the key is to find something that you love so much that you can keep failing and still want to do it. And if you can make it through those failures, eventually they turn into successes and you find yourself where you want to be.
That's great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, can we give a huge thank you to Mr. Overs?
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you. All right. And so this is just a start. Ultimately, as we continue throughout the year, we're going to be putting some different people in front of you all. And our goal is to allow you guys to, in a way, interact with them face to face to where you can find something that maybe, you know what, I never thought about that. Who would have thought that Mr. Overs was, I mean, many of you who have him in class, you guys know he's a pretty funny guy. But I honestly didn't realize that he was a comedian and wrote jokes. That's pretty cool. And I never would have thought for a moment that his career trajectory would have landed him where he's at. And so all of that to say, as we continue to have different folks up here, the goal is for you guys to be able to take away some different things. One of them being, as an alum, that he was able to come back and land here. We have some other alum that they're all over the country doing some incredible things. And so really what we want is for you guys to learn that don't keep your options limited. So for some of you, you're saying, Mr. Grove, I will never, ever go to college. My dad said the same thing, and he ended up getting his bachelor's like 40 years after he graduated high school. All right? Life changes all the time. To Mr. Overs' point, one of the things is just being open to what God has for you. And so for some of you, you may not be at that point to where, you know what, I want to follow after what God has for you. My hope and prayer is that you do get to that point. I never dreamed in a million years that I would be working at a Christian school. I thought for sure I would be somewhere in Washington, D.C., but this is where I'm at. And so all that to say, as we continue throughout the year, we'll keep you guys informed of some different opportunities. We are working through some other college visits. We will be having some different colleges visiting us here relatively soon. So during lunchtime, I challenge you guys, when we have those college visits come in, connect with those different admissions folks that come to visit. We'll have other different organizations that will be put in front of you guys, some other different opportunities throughout the year. And so the goal, again, is to be able to start exposing you guys to different options that you may never thought of before. Because, again, Mr. Overs and I both, we never thought that we would be in education. This is where we're at. Now, he has seen a lot more cooler things than I have. I got to admit, it's pretty awesome. But all that to say, as we continue throughout the year, I want you guys to go after it with open hands, open eyes, and open minds, because with all of that, you only get what you put into it. So if you guys walk into one of these Pat Chats and your mind is closed to what they may be saying, you never know. This is something that the Lord may be calling you into. And so as we have these different visitors, I encourage you to try to connect with them. You guys have an ample opportunity to connect with Mr. Overs day in and day out. But as we have these speakers come in, my hope is that you guys are attentive. You tune in and focus in on some of the things that they're saying. I think the biggest things I heard from Mr. Overs here today is don't be afraid to fail, right? To have that grit, to have that resilience is an incredible thing, and that's a skill that employers will look for, all right? So that being said, we have just a few more minutes before the bell transitions, and so let's see here, where are we at? Mr. Bindick, what time did we get dismissed? 34? 36? All right. So we ended just a couple minutes early. But here's what we're going to do in just a few moments. We're going to let you guys sit here for just a little bit. In just a few moments, we'll dismiss you guys just a couple minutes early because I know it's a little bit of a hike. All right? So just hold tight for just a little bit, and then we'll dismiss in just a moment.